Welcome back. We're reading Army Brats, and we're now on chapter 4. Have a good day, Dad called. Tom turned in time to see Dad nearly trip over Cupcake, who had come to the front door to see Tom and Charlotte off on their first day of school, or to see if they'd drop any crumbs from the banana muffins Dad had made for breakfast. Thanks, Tom said, giving Cupcake a reassuring pat. You too, Dad, Charlotte said. Her voice was strained, but that was normal for a first day of school. Tom knew his sister always worried about making friends, and this year, with Tom busy during lunch, Charlotte was particularly stressed about finding people to sit with in the cafeteria. I know we can all understand that. Tom was sure it would all work out, though, especially since here on post they were surrounded by kids just like them, Army kids. Tom and Charlotte pulled on their backpacks, green for Tom, purple for Charlotte, while Dad headed back to the kitchen where Rosie was announcing plans to make a hamburger milkshake for Cupcake. Yuck. Rosie would be going to the elementary school next to the Fort Patrick Middle School, but her day started 15 minutes later than theirs, so Dad had 15 minutes to try to talk her out of the milkshake idea. Tom and Charlotte headed down the front steps. The sun shone brightly, and the slight breeze felt good. Hey, Baileys, Tash called. She was standing at the foot of their driveway. Want to walk together, she asked, tugging on the strap of her pink messenger bag. I don't start early band practice until next week. Sure, Tom said. Maybe walking with a girl who'd been living on post a while would help his sister relax. So, what number school is here for you? Let's do that again. So, what number school is this for you? He asked as they started down Bingham Road. Fort Patrick Middle School was only 4 blocks away. Tash pursed her lips for a moment as she considered. We spent 2 years in Germany, and then Hawaii, then Texas, and last year we moved here from D.C. So that's 5. What about you? We were in Hawaii too, for first and part of second grade, Charlotte said. They stopped at the corner and waited for the crossing guard to wave them across the street. There were barely any cars, but the Army clearly made sure the kids were super safe all the way to school. We lived off post there, though, and then we moved to Vermont to be near our grandparents while Mom served in Afghanistan. That had been the hardest 2 years, barely seeing Mom and worrying every night about whether she would come back home at all. Tosh nodded knowingly. Yeah, Dad was over there for a year and it was tough, she said. Again, Tom felt the rush of pleasure at being with other kids who knew what Army life was really like. They were almost to the school now, and the sidewalk was getting crowded. 2 boys shoved past, one of them jostling Tom's arm. He was about to tell the kid to watch it when he realized who it was. Chase Hammond, which made Tom close his mouth right up. That guy really pushes things, Taj said, shaking her head as they walked up the path to the small brick building. There's no bullying at post schools, but he comes as close to a bully as you can get. Tom would definitely be avoiding Chase, and he wanted to ask Tosh why there was no bullying here. That was hard to imagine, but he was distracted by the way Charlotte's face had gone pale as they walked through the metal doors and into the lobby of what looked like any other school. Faded cream-colored walls with flyers stating times for band and soccer tryouts, scuffed linoleum floors, and groups of kids standing around and talking. If anything, it was less intimidating than other schools they'd attended because it was so small. Mom had told them there were only 56 graders, which Tom figured would give the school a kind of a family feeling. Maybe that was why there was no bullying. The 3 of them headed over to the 6th grade locker alcove. Tom had to spin his combination twice, but then he was able to get it open. The locker smelled like moldy bread, so he quickly stowed his backpack inside and slammed it shut. He and Charlotte had compared schedules the night before, and so he knew they were in different homerooms. In fact, they only had one class together at all. Good luck, you guys, Tosh said, waving as she headed off. Charlotte was now blinking rapidly, a sure sign she was anxious. Charlotte was, Don't worry, Tom told her. Really, he didn't get why she was so stressed out. It was a small school with kids just like them. But Charlotte still looked pale. See you later, she said faintly, before heading down the hall to her homeroom. Sometimes girls were just weird, even his sisters. Tom walked the other way, checking room numbers until he found room 102. He headed inside where about 10 other sixth graders were either sitting at their desks or standing around talking. A few kids were sitting alone, and Tom wondered if they were new to the base just like him. He sat down next to one of them, a boy wearing an Avengers t-shirt. "Hey, I'm Tom Bailey. He We just moved here last week," he said. "Cool shirt." "Thanks," the boy said. "I'm Kenny Pham. My family's only been here for about 3 months." "So, who's your favorite Avenger?" Tom asked, ready to discuss one of his all-time favorite topics. But just then the warning bell rang, and someone slipped in right before the teacher shut the door. And when Tom saw who it was, his heart sank. Chase Hammond. Of course, in a school so small, it made sense they'd have some classes together, but it seemed like a bad way to start the day. "Good morning," their teacher said crisply, as he strode toward the front of the room. "I'm Mr. Yannetti, your homeroom teacher, as well as your English teacher and social studies teacher. We run a tight ship here at Fort Patrick Middle School, and it starts right here, right now, in my class." Tom tried not to sigh. "You raise your hand, and you do not speak until you have been called on," Mr. Yannetti said. He had reached the front of the room and was standing in front of the whiteboard, his back straight, his gaze piercing. "This means that if I do not call on you, you do not speak. Should you ignore this rule and speak out of turn, you go to the office. There is no discussion. There are no excuses. It's simply you out the door on your way to chat with Principal Ramirez." Yikes, this is probably why there was no bullying at a post school. They found the strictest teachers in the universe to teach here. Mr. Yannetti ran through more rules, did roll call, and then told the class to sit quietly until the bell rang. Tom was scared to breathe too loudly, and he could tell that everyone else felt the same way. Well, everyone except Chase. He was moving restlessly in his seat and yawning loudly enough to earn a look from Mr. Yannetti. Finally, the bell rang, freeing Tom and his classmates. Tom nearly sprinted from the room, hoping that his next class, math with Miss London, would be better. But when Tom was almost to the door, a shout in the hall outside made him jump, and when he did, his arm knocked into the boys right behind him. "Watch it," the boys hissed, and Tom's chest clenched up. Of all the boys he could have elbowed, who do you think he elbowed? That's right. Tom had elbowed Chase. And somehow when it happened, Chase had dropped something on the ground. "What's this?" Mr. Yannetti snapped as he marched over to the boys. Both Tom and Chase took a step back, and there on the floor was a small metal object. "To whom does this belong?" Mr. Yannetti asked, carefully picking it up. "It's his," Tom said, helpfully, pointing at Chase. He figured Mr. Yannetti would give whatever had fallen back to Chase, and that would be the end of it. But instead, Mr. Yannetti was scowling, and Chase's eyes were wide. And suddenly Tom's heart began to beat just a little bit faster. Uh-oh. Let's see what's going on here. "You brought a weapon into school," Mr. Yannetti said to Chase, who sputtered for a moment before managing to speak. "No, sir, it's not a weapon. It's just a pocket knife. It's just a tiny pocket knife." Chase and Tom both gazed hopefully at Mr. Yannetti, because the explanation had to make things better. A tiny pocket knife wasn't dangerous after all. But Mr. Yannetti looked as though Chase had announced it was a microscopic grenade launcher. "I'll need you to come with me," he said shortly to Chase. Chase's mouth twisted, and he sent Tom a death glare before following their teacher out of the room. After a moment, the rest of the class began to file out. Tom joined them, feeling almost lightheaded from all that had gone wrong in such a short amount of time. "That's not good," Kenny said, coming up to Tom as he headed blindly toward math class. "I know," Tom said, "but it's not a real weapon, so he won't get in that much trouble, right?" Kenny's gaze was pitying. "Any kind of weapon in school is bad," he said. "It's definitely big trouble." Tom didn't get why Kenny said this like it was a death sentence. "This is a post school," Kenny explained, "and when you get in big trouble at a post school, they don't call your parents." Tom started to let out a sigh of relief. "They call your Army parents commanding officer." Both Tom's breath caught in his chest. That was why there was no bullying here. Nothing would be worse than a parent getting scolded by a commanding officer. Nothing. Well, nothing except Tom's life at Fort Patrick Middle School now that he had made Chase Hammond his enemy. This is getting good. All right. See you for chapter 5.